2, 1. Hey guys, and welcome to the Amino Biohacks podcast. On today's episode, I've got my good friend Tim Ayling, and we're basically going to have a little discussion about being a personal trainer, being a gym owner, all the things that Tim's kind of done over the last kind of probably. How many years have you been in the industry, Tim?
As a personal trainer, probably close to 15 years now.
Yeah, exactly. So over the last 15 years. So, but what I normally suggest to guys we do is that if you give the guys a bit of a rundown about your background and how you got into the industry and anything that's kind of background related.
Okay. I mean, my original career was as a chef, believe it or not. But kind of fell out of love with chefing and the lifestyle. And I decided, I wanted to be a bit more healthy. I needed a job where I'm not sort of stuck behind a desk. So I decided to go into personal training. My first 3 years were with Virgin Active in one of the London Virgin Actives, where I made it to elite trainer, did various courses through them, just basically getting to learn the craft a little bit. And then in 2010, my friend and I decided to open up our studio, which was Ignite PT, which is based near Liverpool Street. And we sort of ran that for 8 years before we sold it on. And now 2 years later, I'm still in the game and I'm sort of doing my own thing.
So you kind of made a nice smooth transition, obviously, from being a trainer yourself to then being a gym owner. And I guess, when you did your qualification, so you went straight into Virgin, was it? Or did you do like YMCA?
Yeah, no, Virgin was the first gym company that I worked for. And it was the first gym that I worked in. As I said, my idea was that because I had no idea where to start and what I was going to do, or I had no client base. I was coming from a very different career. I figured it was, for me personally, it was a good idea was to go into one of the big name gyms and sort of do some courses through them and practice being a PT and learning the craft itself and how to communicate. And because one of the reasons why I got out of chefing was I felt I was losing my interpersonal skills. And because I was working by myself all the time, and I thought, well, I just can't do this anymore. And sort of mentally, I wasn't in a great space, and I needed to change. Okay. So that's why I went into PT. It was all about being healthier and growing and doing something that I had an interest in. So I sort of went from there, did various courses through Virgin Active, did a few other ones on my own as well, some kettlebell courses and various Olympic lifting courses and things like that. And then when I sort of got to the point where I felt I'd gone as far as I could with Virgin Active, other than going down the managerial route, which I never wanted to do, I started sort of chatting to a friend about, possibly having my own gym. And between the two of us, after a year of planning and searching, we found a place and decided, well, let's do this.
And so for anybody who was thinking, say they're a complete novice to health and fitness, I know there's obviously a big rise in people wanting to become personal trainers. Say you've got no background experience. What advice the advice that I took from what you just said was that you recommend that you should join a big gym group and then use them to help you get kind of qualified and certified. Is that what you were kind of?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's going to depend on the individual. It's going to depend on the background you come from as well. If you've come straight out of school and never had a job, it's probably a good place to start. It's going to give you some corporate ties. It's a recognizable brand. It can help you in a lot of ways. And there's nothing wrong with people doing that. If you're somebody who's coming from a sporting background, for instance, and you've already got a bit of an identity of your own, then maybe look at sort of going more of a niche market and teaching what as an athlete or whatever, and use your profile in that way. So I think it's really going to depend on the individual. From my perspective, I chose to do that because I had no idea how to begin. I'd sort of done an online course, and it took me a year to do it via distance learning, because I was still working full time. Once I sort of had enough qualifications, I then applied to Virgin Active, partly because a friend or the trainer of my wife at the time suggested, look, why don't you give it a go? They're having an open day. And so that's kind of how I got into it. I've met other people who have had a very clear and definite path that they've wanted to follow. And I think if you have that, it can put you ahead of other people. It also helps to sort of know the direction you want to take. Like for me, it was never about the six pack and the big muscles and competing on stage. I'm not a body transformation person. It's always been about movement for me. So I like that sort of training. I enjoy the Olympic lifting. I enjoy kettlebells, Bulgarian bags, all that sort of fun stuff. I love CrossFit. It's not so at the moment, the name CrossFit's probably going through a bit of a tough time, but the modality and the
ethos, I guess, isn't it? The ethos.
It's done wonders for a lot of people. And all my family do it. My wife does it. My kids do it. I do it. I coach it. And it's, for me, that's been great. But for other people, it could be that they want to do the body transformations. They might want to go nutritional one. So it really depends on which way you want to go.
I think it's really good what you've kind of alluded to there. It's this idea that maybe thinking, obviously there is training and there is being, obviously having the name personal trainer or the job title personal trainer, but then within that there are subcategories, and it's worth, if you're new to the space, you're thinking about, you're toying with the idea, then it's definitely worth thinking about what type of niche or what route you might end up taking. I think that's really, really, really good advice for anybody who's kind of new to the idea or new to the space. I think it's really
absolutely
helpful. And then and I was gonna say, so what are some of the pitfalls? Anybody, to say somebody was new, they'd kind of signed up with Virgin, like what kind of things would you be advising to them as a new trainer, like kind of things to watch out for, mistakes not to make?
Well, look, I think making mistakes is not necessarily a bad thing, as long as you learn from them. Sometimes you have to make a mistake. You have to fall down before you can pick yourself up and develop from that. But I think, if you come into this industry thinking that you're going to be charging top dollar from day one and you're going to make a nice, comfortable living and people are just going to flock to you, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. There's a lot of competition and it's just getting tougher. There's even more competition nowadays. There's less spaces to work in. I think people, you've got to come in with your eyes open, and you've got to realize that if you want to be successful, you're going to have to continue to learn, continue to read. You're going to have to continue to work on your craft and not just get stuck in a comfort zone. And you're going to talk to people. Don't just try and do it on your own, because there's so many things that I still need to learn about this industry. Like I'm a bit of a dinosaur. I've sort of grown up in an era without everybody having a PC and a mobile phone. So, the social media stuff doesn't come naturally to me. It's something that I have to actually, I have to build up courage to do that, if that makes sense. And for instance,
it's one of those things. So I was just going to say, it's like one of those things, I guess, like the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. So it's like this idea that you're always continually having to, the things that you needed to know at the start are not the things that you need to know now, I guess. So as you've evolved.
Yeah, definitely. You have to go and do different courses. You have to broaden your horizons, and what you think might be the perfect way to train is not necessarily going to work with the average Joe or somebody who, let's face it, doesn't understand it all, is not that interested in knowing all the technical side of it. And, they barely have time to go and grab lunch, let alone fit an hour of training in every day. You're going to have to adapt your style so that you can get the message across, even if you sometimes have to do that remotely or over a period of time. I think learning good communication and people skills is a key element. If you can't get your message across, you're going to struggle to succeed. And I've seen that with trainers, some that have all the knowledge in the world, but just cannot get that message across and keep their clients engaged enough to get that message across. And therefore it takes them a long time to actually get going.
It's really helpful. There's some really interesting points there. Getting a message across, like, can you communicate? it's about understanding, you can have all the science up here, but if you can't get it across, I think it's such a really, really interesting point. So let's move on from just being PT. So let's go into the gym owner part. So what were the kind of big learnings in your 10 years of owning your own gym space? what are the key things? Like, what are the kind of key pitfalls and stuff to watch out for, I guess? What are the benefits as well?
If you're gonna, well, I mean, the benefits are, it's your space. You can sort of say how you want it to be and do what you want. It's also, a sense of achievement. We were very proud of what we had achieved with Ignite. When we sold, I think it was the right time for us to do so, just purely from a stress level type point of view. I mean, being a gym owner, it's not as easy as people think. It's not a case of you just get there and you get all these trainers in and they pay you money and whoa, you quid's in, because we certainly weren't. And there was a lot of learning curves, and we kind of went in with rose-tinted glasses and thought, oh, okay, well, if we do this, and we aimed our studio at personal trainers. That was the idea. It was meant to be a nice working space for them. And we thought trainers would flock to us, and then it didn't happen. And there were a couple of times where we were actually seriously thinking, do we need to close the doors? Because we'd sort of almost exhausted all of our resources, but we managed to persevere and come through that. But I think having a strong identity and marketing strategy is probably one of the key things that you need if you're going to start up your own gym. Just because from day one, you're going to be paying for things that you haven't thought about, and you're going to need to get people in as quickly as possible, and the right people that they're going to stay. So I think having a clear strategy of what you want, knowing exactly who you are and who you want to attract, that's probably the number one thing I would say.
Probably say it sits in with the marketing adage that I hear around a lot, this idea that if you market to everybody, you market to no one. And I think if I understand what you're saying, it's this idea that you need to know your target market, so you can attract the right type of trainers, number one, and then I guess the trainers then attract the right type of clientele for what your vision is, I guess. So that's a really go on. What are you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, it would also depend on the model you want to take as well. I mean, if for our model, that would be exactly what I would say. If you're going to have your own trainers that work under you, and you need to have your own branding and identity and systems in place, so that each trainer knows exactly what's expected of them, and what the business wants and how they market themselves. So, but the main thing is just really knowing your identity.
Really, that's so good. It's so helpful, I guess. So for anybody out there thinking about setting up your own gym, there's some wise words there for you. What type of clientele were you working with? Like, what's your median age range, and what are they? Is it movement stuff, or what's the?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've always marketed myself more as a functional movement. Functional movement is a bit of a byword, but a movement-based trainer. I'm definitely not a body transformation person. I have my feelings about that. I think it has its place, but I don't think the general population necessarily just need that. I think they need more strategies on how to deal with life, how to have a balance in life, rather than how to develop a six-pack, But then my target market is more the sort of middle-aged, busy business professional. Male and female, I don't mind. I actually like a half mix, because it stops you becoming too male-centric or too oversensitive, or whatever the case may be. I enjoy getting to know my clients. I don't sort of have a hands-off approach. I don't try and be distant and say, this is what you have to do and that's it. I like to get to know them, see what makes them tick, what pressures they have outside of the gym, so that I can utilize that and incorporate that into their training as well.
That's quite interesting. So, and what are the big kind of commonalities that you'll see? So your demographic is middle-aged, male, female. business professionals. What kind of commonalities and traits do you see in that demographic?
Well, I mean, most of them, it would be really busy schedules, very stressed out, bad posture, quite often have the lower back pain, knee issues, hip issues, because they're sitting all day long in front of a computer, you know. So that's probably the first thing that I start with them, is just trying to get them to extend and flex properly, and to be more mobile, and to try and incorporate more movement-based stuff within their lifestyles, but fitting it within their busy schedules. So for instance, you know, if you're going to walk to, if you're not too far from work, try and walk to work, or walk home from work in the summer. You know, get off one stop earlier from than your tube stop, so that you've got a little bit extra to walk up the stairs, walk up escalators, just simple stuff like that, but just to get them moving.
Little hacks, I guess, that you can kind of easily, like cutting most bang for buck type of thing. I guess it's an efficiency thing, is what you're alluding to.
Well, it's also, I mean, like, the reality is 1 hour in a week, or even 2-3 hours in a week, you're not going to change fundamentally that much about a person unless you start looking at the stuff they're doing outside of the gym as well. And yeah, I'll be a nice friendly ear for them to talk to, or moan to, or, you know, almost like a counseling session. So, you know, and if it helps in a small way, then I'm more than happy to do that, you know. So I almost sort of try and become a friend and a confidant, but I don't overstep that boundary of being a professional and a friend, if that makes sense, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you think about, like, health in the workplace? Because obviously you mentioned, obviously work has made is the people you're aiming at, their work obviously plays a big part in their lives. Where do you see the landscape moving? Like, do you see, like, people using more fit tech type of stuff, or what's your general consensus on those types of individuals?
Well, look, I think, you know, especially with the climate we're in at the moment, with COVID-19 and people working from home and things like that, it's what I found is I had to adapt very quickly. My entire business was front facing. It was, you know, face to face, and then suddenly overnight I lost literally every single client and every bit of business I had when the lockdown happened. And so I've had to be flexible and adapt. But the benefit that's come out of that is, fortunately, I had started using the Trainerise system. I don't know if you know that system, but it's an online PT app. So I was able to start doing online programs for some of my clients, where I could send them an app with videos and stuff that was all set up. It looked a lot more professional. Some of them have actually come back to me and said, you know what, weirdly, even though they can't come see me, they're doing more fitness now, because A, they can do it, fit it into their day when they have time. And B, it's, you know, obviously we've all had a little bit more time on our hands, so people have been able to do that and de-stress and get more sleep and all these things that we also know are important in the industry. I think there's a lot of opportunities coming for PTs that are willing to be adaptable. But I think, you know, for me personally, I'm going to go forward in a hybrid style of training, where I do a little bit of online, a little bit of face-to-face, and a little bit of like Skype sessions. That's something new that for me as well. So I'm starting to learn how to use the sort of apps and the electronic side a lot more to my benefit for the business as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I guess this whole space, I guess it's like, health is a dynamic process. It's always changing. The advice that we get given, eat this, don't eat this, do this, don't do that. It's obviously, there's lots of conflicting evidence. So it's such a dynamic health, wellness, lifestyle, such a dynamic, fluid space. There's always room for improvement, I guess, isn't there? And I guess if you compare what we do now to 10 years ago or 20 years ago, it's the landscape is always
it's completely
fluid and different, isn't it? I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, even in the 15 years that I've been doing it, it's so different. I mean, when I first started, everybody was joining the big gyms. You know, CrossFit was hardly even known in London at that time. Yeah, 15 years down the line, CrossFit's a big thing. There's CrossFit boxes all over the place. The functional training's, you know, is proper functional training now. It's, you know, using compound movements, using heavy weights, that sort of thing. the sort of information technology side of things is moving forward so quickly now. And there's some good programs and stuff out there that you can utilize. There's lots of people doing online sort of training courses. So, I think if people are willing to put the effort in, there's going to be opportunities for sure.
And would you say,
but the one thing that will be consistent, I think, is that you still got to have that personal contact.
Connection.
Not so much as in face-to-face, but just reaching out, making sure your clients are okay, checking up on them, not always just about business, but in general, how are you doing? Is anything, do you need anything or whatever? And just showing that you actually care and they're not just a paycheck.
It's that connection thing, I guess, isn't it? Like, is training about the training, or is there something more deeper to it? Is there something with more depth to it? Is it about accountability? Is it, will the robots, will they ever be able to replace us on that level? I don't know. It's interesting to see. Is it all?
Well, I'd like to say, I hope not. I mean, even the big companies, like, you look at Peloton, they're all over the place now, and they're branching into every aspect of fitness, but they've still got a sort of a personal element to the whole thing. And I think that's the key. And if you can do that, you'll continue to hold on to clients and hopefully get some more referrals and generate organic business as well as media business. So I think we need to focus on all elements, really.
Would you say movement is your main philosophy, just to clarify?
In terms of my training style, yes, movement is very much a big part of it. But as I'm getting older myself, I'm sort of understanding the pitfalls that people have, particularly middle-aged people. Things ache a bit more, and it takes a bit more time to recover, and you've got other pressures that sometimes you've got no control over, like kids. For all best intentions and plans, they have a way of diverting all your plans in the direction you weren't expecting. But that's that's life. And I think learning, because I've been through those experiences myself, while opening the studio as well. We had twin boys like just before we opened the studio, so there's a lot of things that I was trying to deal with at times. I think that helps me, and that I'm able to empathize with people, so I can almost be like a counselor. I'm not a counselor, just for the record, but people will often talk to me, and we'll talk through issues and just try and be a helpful friend as well as a trainer.
And I guess it's like if I've understood you correctly there, it's this idea of optimizing. It's like there's no perfect program, but like health, wealth, love, happiness. Health is obviously a big thing that people value, but at the end of the day, it has to fit in amongst all those other domains, which obviously family plays a big role. Family, work, money plays a big role in. So I think it's some really valuable advice there to take for anybody who's stressed out about their health and well-being. It's this idea of taking some pressure off yourself and optimizing a program so that it fits in and that it's fun and you enjoy it and you want to stick to it, I guess.
I mean, if they feel that their program or their training is a chore, they're not going to stay with you for too long.
100%.
But if they find it, for them that's an outlet and it's a way of dealing with some of their stresses and having a break and just being able to forget their issues for a while, I think you're going to get far more success out of that, and you're going to get far more buy-in from them as well. Not everybody, although they will all come to you and say, I want to lose weight or control weight. For some people, that isn't really what they're there for. It's a de-stress, or it's just something for themselves. And if you can connect on that level, you'll have a lot more success.
Some really great advice. Awesome. So we'll probably look to wrap up in a minute. We've kind of delved into some really interesting points. For the future of health and wellness, what would be your kind of, what direction do you see us going? Kind of what direction do we need to be heading? Is it this idea of optimization, or what do you think the landscape, in your opinion, we should be doing?
Look, I mean, if one thing COVID-19 has shown us is that by being a little bit healthier and, I don't want to point fingers, but not being obese and things like that, just generally being healthier people, it does make you more resilient to these dramas that we're having at the moment. It also helps you to deal with the mental stress a lot better. So I think, hopefully people have realized that, it is important to be a lot healthier, but also about having a balance. And I think that's the way people hopefully will start to go and finding more of a balance, because they won't have to be at the office all the time. They can work from home a little bit more. They can have a slightly better family life time. I think it's going to, we've still got to see how we come out at the end of this, but hopefully people are going to look after themselves a bit more and give themselves a bit more love.
Awesome. Tim, if people want to find out a bit more about you, where can they get hold of you? Is it social media? Do you have a website?
Well, I'm on Instagram, Tim Ayling, TIMAYL. Capital T.
Put a link below for anybody who wants to get.
I'll put it in. Yeah. I'm also on Facebook, Timothy Ayling, and I've got a website as well, which I'll give you the link for.
Guys, if you've got any questions or anything you want to ask Tim, then you can be able to reach out to him in the comments section below. Make sure you hit the subscribe and like button, as it helps us with our YouTube algorithm. Tim, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on, buddy. Hopefully,
no problem, mate. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.